So how do we quit? How do we change? How do we evolve? How do we do that and still save our reputation, save our relationships, and continue to do good work? Today on the Leadership We Need Now, where we talk about courageous, kind, and compassionate leadership, we're going to talk about that. I'm Stacie Dei, and I've been a nonprofit director, an executive coach, and strategist for over 20 years. And today we want to talk about all of these things. But first, please join us. Come into our community so we can continue to share information about the work that we're doing, about leadership for today. Subscribe to our social media, follow us, like our work, and comment. We'd love to hear more about what you have to say about some of these topics. The reason I do all this is because when I was going through whatever I was going through leadership, I felt so alone. I felt like it was a personal problem, or even if I did talk to someone, they weren't experiencing it in real life. They were, giving it to me. It was my significant other or someone who worked for me or someone that was a peer. And all of those things have a different paradigm, different evaluation point. And so how do we, as leaders, how do we stay strong in our convictions and our ideas and our creativity, but then open ourselves up to input and support and evaluation and criticism in a way that helps move us forward? And those are, I think, the biggest pieces where all of these things, when people say they have exact answers to these or how you do things, they just aren't telling the truth. And so for me, it's about the fact that when you're going through these emotions, how do you find your sea legs? How do you find your grounding to be able to make the next right decision? How do you not lose yourself in an idea? How do you step back and say, it's time to call it. It's too much. It's been too much. It isn't working. When I look back at my experiences, there are more times that I should have quit or should have walked away or should have pivoted than that I should have worked harder. So in hindsight, I should have quit more. I should have walked away more. I should have stepped back more. And I think I was just always conditioned and taught and raised to work hard, which I value. And I put so much emphasis on that it was so hard. I took so many personal connections of, my moral compass, my ego, my whatever, into not quitting, to say that I never quit, to say that I showed up, I did the hard work, I did the stuff, I did everything I said I would do, but it was always at the detriment of my own mental health, my own physical health, my own family, my own, even my own creative spirit sometimes was jeopardized because I felt like I had to finish something I started. You don't start something and not finish it. And so I think my evolution in leadership, looking back, is there was so much time I wasted because the things that you say yes to means you say no to something else. And when you're saying yes to things that you shouldn't be doing, that things you shouldn't be working on, or things that should die and kind of be cast aside, the more you have to say no to all of the other things you do. And I think that's the lesson I learned, is that when it's time, it is okay to let go. It is okay to say goodbye to something, even if it was something. I think back to programs that I loved and just poured my heart into, that people loved, that were so good, that were like, this is how you do things. And then it wasn't. And I had to be able to step back and say, it's time. It's time even if I didn't say it, maybe somebody said it for me. Maybe the funding got cut. Maybe, volunteers moved on, or partners changed, leadership, or something happened where I didn't have a choice in that change. It kind of happened to me. But it was almost the ability to let go of something beautiful and something I learned so much from and I got so much from, and being able to set that aside to be able to find what was next. And I think that when we think about quitting, first of all, I think it feels like a negative word, but maybe it's that we change the word to pivot. Maybe it's, I always say in communication, I always say my current best thinking, because I don't want to feel so steadfast in an idea or so steadfast in a direction that I couldn't change my mind in a way that people would know that my mind wasn't 1000% made up about anything. Really, my mind is not 1000% made up about most things. And so when we look at quitting something or changing something, I think we need to talk about it in terms of different terminology, like pivoting, being responsive, to what's happening, versus the idea that we just don't follow through with responsibilities. I think that the how to on quitting is really about, once you do make the decision, once you sit down and you have decided that this is not in your best interest, this is not in the best interest of the program or the services or the organization or the company or even the people you serve. Once you make that decision, it is about stepping back, putting together a list of people this will affect, whether that's in a primary way because you provide that service, you provide that product to them, or even if it's in a secondary way, if it's to your community or if it's to an organization or a city, making sure that you know that your decisions affect others is something that you can literally, again, make this list. Who will this affect? Making sure that you're in communication with them about how you're making this decision, why you're making this decision, that you obviously didn't make this lightly, um, is really important, not only for your own peace of mind, but also in that connection and that relationship, and for them to feel like now they have decisions they have to make. So you're passing them this opportunity to then make decisions from it. There's been plenty of times where I have had to say, I can't do this anymore with partners. It's too much. I don't have the staff. I don't have the capacity. We don't have the money. And there have been partners who have taken on those things, who have said, you know what, I understand that that doesn't fit in your mission any longer. That doesn't fit with what you can do, but we actually can do those things. And that was such a blessing. And that was something that, because I had come to them, because I had, before the decision was public, before the decision was final, I had talked to them about how that could work, how that could transition. And then I helped that process along. Those things still exist today, even after a decade. And so making sure that who's involved is part of the conversation before a final decision making happens could be the way that something survives past you, outside of you, which is what you really want for something good. I think second, you need to look at how this, maybe, yes, how it will affect the people, people that you serve, people that you partner with, but how will this affect you? How will this affect you personally? How will this affect your reputation? How will this affect the work that you get in the future, or the clients that you have in the future? And I think that this is where you have to spend a lot of time building your list. And again, I love a good list. So when I say a list, it is also just, for me, about getting something out of my head into paper, onto paper. And it's also, my brain sorts things in a certain way, so I have to compartmentalize sometimes. And having it be visual for me is so important. For you, it might be typing up notes on your phone. It might be talking it out with a friend. But for me, it is always probably going to go to a list. So if that's not your thing, I'm going to apologize for not being able to give you clear of direction as the list takers out there. But for me, it's about saying, what will this do? And sometimes the penalty won't be as much as the reward. So you will need to probably somehow figure out, maybe it's not a quit, maybe it's a scale back. Maybe it's finding other people who can do the work. Maybe it's, if you have a client that you're working with that you don't feel like your missions align, or you don't feel like you have the personalities to work together, that is perfectly normal. That is understandable. Sometimes you will have to always push through that. But if you have the privilege to select that and you don't know how that moves forward, you can find ways to scale back, to bring other people in who do have a better relationship with that person, who do have the opportunity to give them what they need. So you're not letting them down with the services, you're just not the right fit. And that's okay. I think that um, when we look at someone leaving a job, let's say someone wants to quit. I think about even myself when I left my position. I loved my job. It wasn't that I didn't love my job. It was that I saw an opportunity for myself where I could be a round peg and round hole, not round peg, square hole. And when I did that, I tried to be as sensitive to their needs, as supportive as I could in making sure that the transition for them was going to be as easy as the transition for me. And to leave them in a better place than I found them. And I think even if you're a contractor, if you're doing work privately or you run your own business, if you leave people better than you found them, if you try to help make the transition easier, even if it's not a right fit, it doesn't have to be a cold, hard cut. It can be a way of easing through, because it may not be worth it for them either, but they don't have the ability to tell you, or maybe they don't know where else to get the support. So you can be that person that helps transition that through. But I think it's so important to make sure that you do pay attention to that. How will this affect you? That is important. Don't, you're not a martyr. You have to make sure that your reputation can stay intact, and you actually can have a process like this add to your reputation. I think for me in my coaching, I am one of the thing that I'm probably the most proudest of is how I transitioned out of my old position, how I coached the next leader, how I helped when I could, how I drew boundaries, what I did in that process, I'm pretty proud of. And so that's actually been a part of how I've gotten additional clients, or how I've worked with different groups, is through that partnership and how that worked. And so I think paying attention to that is really important. It doesn't negate the fact that that something has to change or evolve or pivot or quit, but it does make the relationships stay stabilized, it doesn't have to be the same that it was, but it can move into a different phase. And so I think as you're looking at this, you can leave something, you can completely leave something. People quit jobs, people leave jobs every day, people stop doing things every day. You can do that without causing harm, causing people to suffer, trying to make sure that you minimize all of those things as you leave it. And I think even sometimes it is okay, it is perfectly okay if it is not a good situation, if it is not healthy, if it is not safe, to quit right now, to walk away and not do any of those things, but to leave and say, this has been detrimental to what I'm doing and I need to leave. That is perfectly okay. And so all of these things are just ways that you can try to navigate through these difficult times. And I think I said it in one of my other videos. When you're making decisions, there are really never any decisions that are 100%, right? And I mean, I guess maybe, but maybe not for me, where you're 100% sure of something. And so, as things get more difficult, as we talk about these topics, these are things where leaving, staying, changing, pivoting, evolving, being responsive, all of those things are sometimes about, are you 51% sure you should do this? And then you have to step forward with that. It's not a perfect decision. It's not the decision you want to make sometimes, but it is that it is 51% to 49%, and you have to move forward with that. So just know that I'm consistently trying to think about ways that I can improve, that I can leave better, come into new opportunities in a better way, that I can leave space for things that I want to say yes to by saying no to things that I don't want to do. And that I'm going through all these things too, that even after 20 some years, these are still things that are happening to me. So if you're new to leadership, if this is happening to you, don't feel like this is any sort of personal failure or responsibility you're not living up to. This is just part of life and part of the journey and part of the ebb and flow of the river that we're riding on. So I appreciate all of you watching, and please make sure to subscribe, follow, like, and support our work. And I will see you soon.